This is a Chrysler Town and Country, and it was overheating. Well, what do you do when your Chrysler Town and Country overheats? Well, first thing you usually do is you replace the thermostat, which is right down here in this area. Yeah, kind of right here where that thing is. The thermostat and the thermostat housing too. You get that for like 20 bucks. Pull it out, pull this one out, put the new one in. It's basically just take this one clamp here, hose clamp, move it down, slide the hose off of it, and there's 2 screws that hold it in. It's usually a pretty easy job. You can usually do it just by taking this one nut out of here and getting this out of the way, squeezing your hand down in there. It's not too long to do. But in this case, that wasn't the problem. What the problem was in this case was a coolant crossover, which looks like this. This thing was leaking and it was draining water all over the ground. Top this off. So it's completely full. There's not much else going on. It's a little wet down here right now. There's that. There is a leak. It doesn't look like it's a head gasket. That's good for this. After I saw it was draining, I came up here and I took my phone like this, ran down here, and I pointed it down at the thermostat here, and you could just see water was coming out of this thing from somewhere. Well, you can see this one here, all that aluminum thing that's plugged into, that is the new housing, or the new coolant crossover. It was like $40 at Advanced Auto Parts, or on Amazon. I think it got for about the same price, maybe 50 bucks. But here's the old one. The old one was plastic, and there's the gasket that was back inside of it. This one is plastic. The new one is aluminum. And here's the actual part for the new one. It has the HP on the end of it. HP usually means that Dorman upgraded the part from the original. Well, what they did in this case was they made it aluminum instead of plastic. So in this case, the problem is right here on this little wall that holds the gasket in place. And it cracked right here. And watch, I'll move it here with my thumb. But yeah, you can see how it's bending right there. Well, it was up there tight like it's supposed to be. Then it cracked. That allowed water to get back underneath there and then go up around the gasket and get out. Well, then with the water pump pumping, it put all that pressure in there and it was just spewing out of this stupid crossover thing. So I put the new one in. It only took about maybe less than an hour to do it myself, or with my dad. The thing you have to do to replace this, it's not too bad to do, but you got to get this nut off, get this out of the way. I took a bungee cord, hooked it up here to this hose, ran it around this, and hooked it back up just to hold this up out of the way. Then I took this off by loosening the nut up here on the top, taking this part off, take the air filter out, and the bottom part just came up out of there. Then the other part that's going to be a little bit more tricky is getting down here to the engine mount right there. That's the engine mount. And to take that out, you have to brace up your engine a little bit. In this case, I use the jack and the 2x4, and I put the 2x4 up underneath the oil pan like that. And I got it. I raised the jack just enough to give a little bit of pressure. All you're trying to do is hold the engine where it is, not trying to raise it up. So you just want to get a little bit of pressure on there and hold it. Now, don't put your jack directly on the oil pan. You will probably put a big bend in it, and then hopefully you might have problems. That would be bad. So don't do that. Put a 2x4 in there and try to get as much of it as you can. And then just, like I said, just put enough pressure on it to hold the engine up. Once you have this out of the way and this out of the way and the engine mount out, then it's real easy to get into the get in there and pull the screws out of the crossover piece. Now, what I did is I took the new one, I put it here on top of this, and as I pulled the bolts out of the original one, I came up here and I put them back into the same spot on the new one, so that way I could keep track of which bolts went where. When it was finished, I'd lay the old one down here next to it, moved all the bolts over to the old one, then took the new one, cleaned up the area, and started installing it and put the bolts all back in the same location where they came out. Because some of them are longer and some of them are shorter. Now, some of these holes are a little bit bigger. You can see like right here, this hole's a little bit bigger. That one's a little bit bigger. I guess those are only two bigger ones, but there's a couple more that have longer screws, and those longer screws have little plastic pieces that slide up over the screw, and I wanted to make sure that those all got put back in the same place too. If you look inside these holes, you see, well, maybe you can't see very well, but it's just plain steel in there now. But when I pulled them out, some of them had plastic in there, and so I wanted to keep those plastic pieces in the same place just so I didn't have any, you know, leaks or anything else. I got the new one put on, got it all tightened up. All of these screws are 7 foot-pounds. The two that hold the thermostat back in place are 8 foot-pounds. And then I put it all back together, and it worked pretty well. Like, I wanted to show this video because of the symptoms that I saw make it real obvious what the problem was. But you just have to know. You have to know what the symptoms were and where to look. The first thing was all the antifreeze was drained out of it, and it was accepting tons of antifreeze. Then it was also leaking underneath like crazy, and that let me know that that something is leaking. And then it was a matter of trying to find where it was leaking, and then finding that it was leaking up around the thermostat made it pretty easy to determine that where the problem was coming from. It was most likely coming from this. So, like I said, this is a coolant crossover. Man, I was really worried it was going to be a leaky head gasket, because these 3.6 liter engines from Dodge are notorious for being pretty bad at that. So anyway, I was glad it was just this crossover piece. But like I said, I got the aluminum one. Hopefully the aluminum one will be strong enough its entire life that this never happens on the newer one, and never have to deal with this again. Anyway, sorry I don't have a good how-to video how to do this one, but it wasn't terrible to do. Make sure you get it up. Make sure you use the correct foot-pounds on this when you're putting it back together. If you don't got one of the foot-pound wrenches, then go ahead and get one. Actually, I think I used inch-pounds for 7 and 8 foot-pounds. Anyway, inch-pounds is probably better. A quarter-inch, I think, is what I used. Anyway, if you have any questions about this, leave them down in the comments, and thanks again for watching.